Imagine you're a scout for one of Africa's football powerhouses. You've just drawn Cabo Verde in World Cup qualifying. You pull up their stats. A nation of under 600,000 people, no domestic league worth speaking of, a squad built almost entirely from the Portuguese second division and scattered clubs across Europe's lower tiers. You close your laptop, you smile. Easy group, you think. And that right there, that exact moment of comfort is exactly how Cabo Verde wants you to feel. Because here's what that scout doesn't see. He doesn't see the 77th minute in Marrakesh 2013 when Cabo Verde's goalkeeper Vozinha made his third impossible save against the tournament favorites and sent an entire nation into delirium. He doesn't see the defensive shape so compact, so suffocating that Morocco, a team packed with League One professionals, completed barely 43% of their attempted entries into the final third. He doesn't see the counter that followed. Lethal, surgical, over before the defender even turned. He doesn't see the trap. This is the story of how a tiny island archipelago off the coast of West Africa engineered one of football's most dangerous tactical identities, Key, and why every team that has underestimated them has paid for it. Let's start with the structure. Because when you watch Cabo Verde without understanding what you're looking at, you see a passive team, you see 11 men behind the ball, sitting deep, inviting pressure. The instinct of almost every opponent in play is to push forward, dominate possession, be patient, break them down. It feels inevitable, it feels logical. That instinct is the first part of the trap snapping shut. What Cabo Verde's coaching staff, most recently under the disciplined hand of Pedro Brito, known as Bubista, have built is not a defensive system. It is a reactive predator. The 5-4-1 block they deploy in their own half is designed not to absorb pressure but to harvest it. Every pass the opponent makes into their shape is being cataloged. Midfield lines tracked, pressing triggers identified, width overloaded. Because when the ball turns over, and it will turn over, Cabo Verde have already calculated where the space will be. Think about what that means for a second. When a fullback pushes forward against Cabo Verde's defensive block and plays a routine sideways pass, that's not a harmless exchange. In Cabo Verde's system, that forward movement has just created a channel. And on the counter, that channel is the entire plan. Their wingers, traditionally relying on pace, directness, and the kind of confidence that only comes from having nothing to lose, are stationed not to work defensively, but to be weaponized the moment possession changes. The transition from defense to attack in their best performances has been clocked at under 4 seconds from defensive action to shot on target. 4 seconds. For context, that's roughly the amount of time it takes a professional fullback to realize he's in trouble and begin tracking back. By then, Cabo Verde are already through. Now let's talk about the 2013 AFCON, because this is where the mythology begins. Cabo Verde entered that tournament ranked 98th in the world. They were widely expected to exit in the group stage. What followed was one of the most extraordinary underdog runs in African football history. They beat Morocco 1-0. They drew with Angola. They beat Tunisia to top their group. And when they eventually fell to Ghana in the quarterfinals, it took a controversial refereeing decision and extra time to eliminate them. The Morocco game is the one analysts keep returning to. Morocco had 67% possession. They attempted 23 crosses. Their XG, expected goals, was 2.4. Cabo Verde's was 0.6, and yet the only goal came from a Cabo Verde counterattack. That is not luck. That is a system working exactly as designed. Cabo Verde's striker's job in their system is not primarily to score. It is to occupy, not with physicality necessarily, but with positioning, by staying goal side, by making the CB's decision uncomfortable. Because as long as the defenders are watching him, they are not watching what's arriving behind them. It's the same principle a chess player uses to sacrifice a pawn in order to clear a diagonal for the queen. The striker is the pawn. The diagonal is the half space behind the advancing fullback. The queen, the winger, arriving at pace into that corridor is where Cabo Verde score their goals, and the opponents keep falling for it because when you're dominating possession, When the match feels completely under your control, your body language changes. Your defensive compactness loosens by inches. Your fullbacks creep forward by a meter. Your central midfielders rotate their hips toward the ball. These are micro adjustments that happen instinctively during sustained attacking play. That precise moment where comfort overtakes concentration. Cabo Verde pressed the trigger. The 2023 AFCON underlined that this wasn't a one-tournament fluke. They went into Egypt and won. They reached the quarterfinals again. Egypt, a nation of over 100 million people with a squad featuring top-flight players across Europe, fell into the same trap. Finished the game with over 60% possession, fewer goals. Why can't teams figure this out? Why? After a decade of evidence, do opponents keep taking the bait? The answer is psychological as much as tactical. Football at the international level is driven by prestige, by expectation, by the narrative that the bigger team is supposed to control. You're expected to win. You must attack. You must impose. The burden of initiative belongs to you before a single minute is played. And Cabo Verde, they have no burden. They have freedom. And free teams are dangerous teams. Manager quotes from opposing coaches after losses to Cabo Verde: "We had the chances, we controlled the game. We just couldn't convert." What none of them say, what perhaps none of them fully understand, is that they were never really in control. They were holding the rope, yes, but Cabo Verde had tied the other end around the trapdoor. Now, as Cabo Verde navigate World Cup qualifying, the template has never been more refined. With 48 nations set to compete at the 2026 World Cup and Africa earning an expanded allocation, the path exists. The squad now features players with more experience, more exposure to European football's tactical education. The system is more sophisticated, the trap is better disguised. But the core of it, that patient, ferocious, psychologically intelligent approach to being the underdog, remains unchanged because it doesn't need to change. It works. It has always worked, not because the opponents are bad, but because the opponents arrive looking at a small island nation and seeing a foregone conclusion. The ball drops, the fullback pushes on, the channel opens, and Cabo Verde are already through. They've been setting this trap for over a decade. The only question left is who's walking into it next.